Okay, let me do an overview of chapter 2. We're looking at mediated communication, and before we jump into it, let's make sure that we understand that mediated communication is any type of communication that occurs via a technological channel. So that's texting, emailing, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, our Elron class, Zoom, anything like that. Usually, when we think of mediated communication, I think we're thinking more of social media, which we will talk. We'll talk more about social media than we will about texting and email. Okay, three main sections to this chapter. It's a relatively simple chapter. This is a subject about which I have, a great deal of theoretical knowledge. I don't have a lot of firsthand knowledge. Yes, I email and I text. Actually, text quite a lot. For years, really, the only social media I had was Facebook. I don't Facebook anymore. I now have Instagram, and I don't even use that an awful lot. So I'm going to be counting on you all to provide solid examples. So the first section, I believe the authors do a very good job of doing a balanced approach to what are the pros and cons of mediated communication. And as you read this, there are two things that I want you to focus on. One is, as we talked about with chapter 1, you see all the authors' names and dates in parentheses, because the authors of this textbook have really made sure that they're not just sharing their opinion. They are looking at authors who have actually done the work, and they're using other people's ideas to back up the points that they are making. So you're going to pay attention to almost the validity. Okay, they've cited this article. Yes, it makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense. But I also want you to be thinking about your own experiences. So basically, we're looking at three things, three different aspects of mediated communication. Does it connect us, or does it keep us disconnected from people? The other one is via mediated communication, can we have deep, meaningful conversations, or are we on the surface? Is it superficial? And then ultimately, is using mediated communication healthy or unhealthy for us? Okay, I have my own opinions. I will try not to force them upon you. I will let you guys decide. So, the textbook says their bottom line is 3 points. That definitely, as the Greek said, all things in moderation. You don't have to get off of all forms of mediated communication. You just have to make sure that you don't let it absorb your entire life. There's a definite difference between people who tend to be happier with mediated communication are active users as opposed to passive users, and people feel better about it when they are communicating with people they know rather than these, I don't know, maybe following influencers or movie stars or whatever. And I thought this was a funny cartoon. It's one that I really like. I'm going to sneeze at some point, so I apologize in advance. Okay. For the discussion for chapter 2, I have a list of questions that I don't expect you to answer all of them, but they are ways to get you thinking about your own use of mediated communication. And I have 3 more here for you to think about. And then we're looking at the pros and cons. What do you think, in your experience? And that can be you or people you know. Is mediated communication more alienating, or is it more of a way to connect? And relationships that are only on social media, can they be meaningful, or are they only superficial? And do you think, so when mediated communication first came into being, there was, as there always is when any kind of new communication comes along, there were people who were saying, this is it, this is terrible, this is the death of civilization as we know it. I mean, people said this about writing. So obviously at the very beginning, people were really against it. And it seems, I'm qualifying this, it seems that it's not as bad for us as people thought it was going to be. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Okay. The second major section looks at the difference between interpersonal communication in the mediated world versus mass personal communication. So in this chart here, we're looking at the blue and the green, because we're looking at, notice the word that's the same in both is personal. Okay, we're not looking at the impersonal. So we're thinking about when we communicate with others in a more personal way. And if it's interpersonal, we're looking at emailing, a private message, texting someone, face-to-face conversation and the phone are not mediated, but they just put those there as examples. Okay. And then I got to tell you, the Jumbotron proposal is one I have a real problem with. Okay, so kind of overall, what are the important differences between these two forms of personal communication that happen in an online environment? Both of them have personal content. We are sharing information about ourselves. We're going to talk about this in chapter 4 when we talk about self-disclosure. Okay. If it's interpersonal, we're sending it to a small number of receivers that we know, that we can identify. Oh, I'm sending this to my sisters. Oh, I'm sending this to the group that I do Zumba with. I don't, but I'm thinking about it. I'm sending this to 2 coworkers, right? And because it is a relatively small group of people that we know, we have a sense that we have an obligation towards them to be whatever that obligation is. Truthful, honest, funny. I guess truthful and honest are the same thing. Kind. And then they have that same obligation towards us. And we also expect that if we share something with them, they're not going to share it with someone else unless they have expressly asked us for permission. On the other hand, things that are mass personal, the audience is much larger. So if I send a message to 2 of my friends, that's different from me posting that same message on Instagram. Unless I say it's for friends only, that means anyone, if I show up in their algorithm, could see it. And the people there feel less that since they don't know me, there's less of a sense that they owe me anything. They don't feel an obligation towards me, and they're free to post that if they want to. So in the past, students have had a challenging time making the distinction between these two. I hope that it's clearer this time around. Okay. In the last section, remember from it looks at competence in mediated communication. If you remember in chapter 1, we spent some time talking about what does it mean to be a competent communicator? What are the factors that go into that? So let's layer on top, what does it take to be a competent communicator in the mediated communication world? Right. It is very important to consider the channel. How are you going to communicate with people? And there the three aspects of the channel are how rich or how lean it is, whether we need to communicate like immediately, synchronously or asynchronously, and how permanent we want the message to be. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over the leanness and richness, because this is a concept that comes up a couple of times. Okay, I'm going to start over on the right. Let's say we were having this class in the classroom. So I'm talking, you're listening, you're sharing information. What makes the communication rich? Well, not only do we have the words that are spoken, we have your voice. Were you speaking loudly or softly? Were you being serious or sarcastic? What was your tone of voice? What were your facial expressions? What was your posture like? What were your gestures? How close were you to me? So there's so much, both the verbal, the words that are spoken, and all the nonverbals that go into this that make it very rich. Well, let's move it into this Elron classroom. So we have the words, we've got the voice, we've got the facial expressions if your camera is on. But we've lost the rest of the nonverbals that the posture of the body language. Posture of the gestures. Okay. Now, let's say that you don't have your camera on, or you're doing this via a phone call. You have the words, you have the voice, and that's it. So you've lost a little bit more of what can make a communication rich. Well, now let's put it in the texting, the completely online class, sending an email, writing a letter. You have the words. And you probably have realized that it is very easy for words to be misinterpreted. So that is why it is considered lean. It's not saying that it's worse. One is worse and one is better. We're just looking at how the channel that you choose has a big impact on all the different parts of the message that go through. Okay. The second component of being a competent communicator in the mediated world is being careful of what you post, respecting people's privacy, or possibly not posting something that you don't want a lot of people to know, and also being civil. So I chose this picture because I'm pretty sure I have the video. It is female reporters, and the man is reading mean tweets that were sent to her, where a lot of people, okay, I don't even know if it's a lot, some people believe that it is all right to say things in a post that they would never say to someone face to face. I'd like to discuss that in class. I think that would be very interesting. The last point is to consider who you're communicating with and your environment. And by environment, not only do I mean the person's background, but also where you are. So, I would not have a conversation. I probably wouldn't be sending my mother things on Instagram. Well, number one, she doesn't have it, and I don't know if she can really. She would very much prefer me to stop by. Okay, her second preference would probably be a phone call, and third would be a text message. So I have to know that about her. People from my generation and older really want your attention. If you are actually talking to us, we don't want you to be involved in mediated communication with someone else. It used to make me crazy when I'd be talking with my daughter and she'd be texting and she'd always say, I'm listening, I'm paying attention. But she'd always miss something. Okay. Also, if you are in mediated communication, be careful of bystanders. Because let's say maybe you're recording a video that you're going to post. Everyone does not need to know what you're talking about. And the last one kind of gets back to an idea that we talked about earlier in this chapter, the idea of balance. That it's okay to use mediated communication, but don't let it consume your entire life, which is why I think that this picture is very funny. You'd have to put on a dog to keep them from getting at a site of surgery. How often do you look at your phone? Can you even get through this class without looking at your phone? So Here are some ideas from this chapter. When you come to class, what I want you to do is make sure that if there is anything that's not clear, you bring it up in class so we can discuss it. If you think of really good examples for some of the points in the chapter, I want you to come to class with those. If you look at what some of the, I'm putting this in air quotes, experts say, and you really agree, good point to bring up in class. If you really disagree or you don't really know what they're talking about, also bring that up in class. All right, I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.